Today, I'll be showing you a powerful new withdrawal strategy that's making the 4% rule obsolete. Over my years helping retirees manage their distributions, I've watched this strategy provide more flexibility and security than the rigid 4% rule ever could. And that's exactly why I'm making this video today, to show you the withdrawal strategy that's replacing the outdated 4% rule and why it may be perfect for your retirement. Let's get right into it. Let's start with what the 4% rule actually is and where it came from. So in 1994, Bill Bengen published an article in the Journal of Financial Planning. And in this article, he was looking at a 50% stock, 50% bond portfolio, and he was trying to answer the question, what is the safest maximum annual withdrawal I can make, percentage of my portfolio, without running out of money over a 30-year time period. And so he back tested these different percentages with all the historical data that was available at that time, and essentially came to the conclusion that 4% was the maximum safe withdrawal rate, assuming you were the unluckiest of individuals retiring at the unluckiest of times. Wade Pfau, a retirement researcher, a modern day retirement researcher, talking about the 4% rule, he wrote an article. As Pfau notes, the period in the late 1960s and the early 1970s was a tough time to retire. Only by limiting their spending to 4% per year from the start of the retirement period could the 1966 retiree reliably avoid running short of funds. So there you go. So that was where the 4% rule came from. If you were unlucky enough to retire in the late 60s, early 70s, the 4% rule still got you through a 30-year retirement without running out of money. I think that the 4% rule is still a good guideline, a good ballpark, a quick way to do math to get you into the ballpark of, do I have enough, right? But it is absolutely not meant to be solely relied on when you're making weighty decisions such as retiring and how much you can sustainably spend, right? And it's so funny because in recent years, just a few years ago, when interest rates were nothing, people were coming out saying the 4% rule is broken. I think a 3% safe withdrawal rate is the new safe max, right? And around that same time, there was a very influential financial person who may or may not be in the same state as me that was claiming an 8% withdrawal rate is a safe withdrawal rate, right? And then you had Wade Pfau and other safe retirement researchers rebuttal to him and say, whoa, like actually 8% is not a safe withdrawal rate. If you had started an 8% withdrawal rate in the early 2000s, you could have ran out of money in the matter of like 13 years. Then this person rebutted to that saying, just absolutely blasting them, calling them super nerds who live in their mother's basement with calculators. And that is just, I'm sorry, that is just, oh man, that is too funny. I'm not saying that 3% is the new safe withdrawal rate. I'm not saying that 8% is the safe withdrawal rate. And really, I'm not even saying like use 4% as your safe withdrawal rate. I'm saying, hey, it can be quick math to get you into the ballpark. Also, one thing we need to understand with the 4% rule, because it is designed to be the safe max withdrawal rate, assuming you retired at the historically worst timing, what ends up happening if you follow this rule is that you end up dying with more money than you started a lot of the times, right? And again, I've said this before and I'm going to reiterate it again. Running out of money is only one way that your plan fails. Dying with too much money is another way that your retirement plan can fail. And so if you're blindly following the 4% rule, you may be in a situation where you are totally underliving your potential. I get there are different preferences. There are some people who want to front load their retirement expenses while they have the time and energy to enjoy the wealth. But I also understand there are people who want to backload their retirement expenses and they are worried about running out of money. So they're okay spending less or living beneath their potential now, right? Every situation is unique. And again, that's what I'm trying to drive home. Every situation is unique. You cannot just blindly follow 4% rule. So if you cannot follow blindly this rule, then what is a better way of figuring out your sustainable retirement income plan? I am a fan of establishing income guardrails, right? Creating dynamic guardrails to create your financial plan. If you've ever worked with a financial planner before, you've probably been shown some form of Monte Carlo that you have 80% probability success of accomplishing your goals, right? And not running out of money. But when people come to me, they're not asking me, hey, what is my probability of success, right? And so the problem with Monte Carlo is that it's only as good as the data and assumptions that are being used in the analysis And it's only as good as the interpretation of that analysis. And because clients don't ask me like, hey, what is my probability of success if we ran 1,000 Monte Carlo simulation? No, they're asking me, what can I sustainably spend, right? And so for that reason, I actually like showing more, hey, based on your current assets and market environments, right? Where the stock market is, where interest rates are, and based on everything that we know and everything that we would expect going forward, like here is what you can sustainably spend. Here is how much money you can spend a month without running out of money in your lifetime. And I've had this conversation just goes over way, way better, right? Because that's what clients really care about, like maximizing their after-tax spendable dollar. With financial planning software, we can determine what a sustainable spending capacity is for your situation and taking into account all considerations, not just your portfolio, but other income streams you have, such as a pension or Social Security, maybe an annuity, whatever, or maybe part-time income, whatever it is. We can help you determine what your sustainable spending capacity is. And we can even toggle between the retirement smile, that retirement expenses may be higher front loaded while you have time and energy to enjoy travel or whatever your goals are, which we would call the go-go years, right? And then that eventually becomes the slow go years as you're aging, your energy is lower, you're staying at home more, so you're not spending as much, right? And then we have the no-go years where maybe health costs are actually increasing. And that's where we see maybe expenses start to increase again at the end of a retirement plan. So that's called the retirement smile. That's one way that we can look at the spending capacity. We can also just say, hey, based on a flat spending rate, how much can you spend today and continue to spend that, keeping pace with inflation for the next 30 years? What is that number? And we can get to that number, right? But one of the things too about a dynamic income plan is that if the market does really good, we can actually increase your spending, right? And if the market does really bad and crosses a lower guardrail, then we can make an adjustment. This is kind of built into the Monte Carlo probability of success. It just is not as intuitive, right? Because even if you had 80% probability of success, that doesn't mean that you have 20% chance failure. That just means you have 20% chance adjustment, making an adjustment, right? And so with these income guardrails, it's just really clear, like, hey, if our portfolio value crosses this threshold, guess what? We can increase your spending. Like, you get a pay raise. And if our portfolio value crosses this lower threshold, well, we're going to have to make an adjustment. And so that's really the value financial plan is not the one and done financial plan, right? It is really in the process of financial planning, being a guide through changing landscapes, as my friend Carl Richards would say, right? That is the real value in what we do, is helping you navigate the inevitable uncertainty that you will face as a retiree, right? Or even as a human. There's so much uncertainty that we all will inevitably face in many aspects of our life, but especially the markets, right? And economies. Okay. Now that you understand the underlying beliefs that make people think the 4% rule is the end all be all, I have to warn you of something important. I can only cover so much information in these videos. Therefore, you got to understand there are complex factors to consider when it comes to changing your retirement withdrawal strategy. And the only way to truly know if you're making the correct decisions is by knowing exactly where you stand for retirement. If you start making drastic changes to your withdrawal strategy without properly assessing your financial situation, you could be causing irreversible damage to your savings. And that's exactly why I want to offer you a complimentary call where I'll sit down with you, analyze your exact situation, and help you come up with a plan for your dream retirement. Just click the link below to book, and let's get back to the video. I'm going to share a real client example that I'm working with, right? I'm working with fantastic clients who are in their 70s. And based on their unique situation, their goals, all of their children are doing fantastic financially, right? They are in no need of an inheritance. And so the parents don't feel any pressure to leave an inheritance. And they want to use the money that they've worked so hard to save up to live their life and to travel and visit the grandkids and do all these things while they still have time and energy to do these things, right? However, they haven't really been able to spend this money, even following the rigid 4% rule. As they're great researchers and they're very familiar with the 4% rule. For them, it doesn't make sense. They're even having a hard time spending the 4%, but that's what they had in their mind. Like, hey, we're going to try and not spend more than that. And the reality is they're not even spending 4%. But when we looked at their plan and their legacy goals and their life expectancy, I was able to help them see they could spend way more than 4% and sustain that over their life expectancy without running out of money or without jeopardizing, their goals. I wish we could have met earlier in their journey so I could have helped coach them earlier to spend more money while they had the time and the health to do so. I have a financial planning software pulled up. This is called Income Lab. We're looking at a couple with $1.9 million, and you can see their spending capacity over their life expectancy is about $10,000 a month, right? And we're looking at real monthly dollars net, right? These are their after-tax spendable dollars, right? How much can they spend? Now, if we look into this a little bit deeper and look at the cash flow, you can see that the gray right here is portfolio withdrawals. Eventually, one of them is going to get Social Security, and later both of them will be drawing Social Security. So you can see a few things, right? This shape is what they call the retirement smile. In the early stages of retirement, you're probably primarily living off your portfolio. And yeah, it is scary when you are because up until this point, you've been a saver and accumulator, and you've seen your net worth and balances grow. But once you have to start spending that money and living off with it, and you may see it begin to decline like that, it can be a source of anxiety or nerves for people navigating that. But really, when you look at this, in those early stages of years, we're okay overspending in those years because that's when you have the time and energy to use that money, right? Those are the go-go years of retirement. And soon, once Social Security kicks in, and maybe some people have pensions or annuities or other types of income streams that can take the burden off their portfolio. But when those income streams come in, you're taking a lot less from your portfolio. And we'll call this stage of life, this decline in expenses, we'll call those the slow go years, where maybe you don't have as much energy and you're staying home more, right? But you eventually get to a point where you might see an uptick in expenses, and that may be from increased medical expenses as you aged, right? And those years we'll call the no-go years, right? So this is the retirement smile. Now, some people want to know, hey, how much can I spend and continue to spend throughout the rest of my lifetime without this? So if we go back to their dashboard, okay, and all we're going to do is change one assumption, so they were able to spend about $10,000 a month now, but let's go to income path, and we're going to change it to flat. And we're expecting a lower number because we're saying, hey, we're not expecting lower expenses in the slow go years. We want to, keep up with inflation. All right, perfect. So you see, $8,700 a month is their new spending capacity with this assumption. And if we click in on here and we look at cash flows, you can see that change, right? We're looking at, $9,000 net over their lifetime. But now looking at the income guardrails, right? This is what we really want to look at. So it shows us, hey, if your portfolio balance reaches this higher income guardrail, guess what? We can actually give you a pay raise, and your new spending capacity jumps to $9,400 a month. But then on the flip side, it says, hey, if your portfolio balance drops below this threshold, we're going to have to make an adjustment, and your spending is going to have to go down for a period of time until markets recover. Okay, it's not necessarily a permanent haircut or pay cut, just a temporary adjustment, waiting until markets recover. And if we click on this, we can actually see a little bit more, right? So you can see these guardrails, and you can decide how conservative you want to be. So right now here, average would be 20% chance of adjustment, but you can say, hey, let's be really conservative. And that we really don't want to, so lower spending, lower chance of adjustment. So now you're spending less, but less likely that you're going to have to make adjustments. Or you can say, hey, some clients tell me, if I don't overdraft my last paycheck, we miscalculated, right? So they're okay spending more, that they may have to make an adjustment later, but they really don't want to die with extra money because some clients don't have anyone to leave the money to, right? And so they may want to be more aggressive in their income guardrails. But either way, yeah, this is how these dynamic guardrails work, right? Here's something interesting too. There is going to be market uncertainty. That's just inevitable, right? And a lot of times, if you haven't crossed the guardrail, the right answer may be, well, don't do anything. Just continue what you have been doing. But it's still valuable to know that that is the answer, that, hey, there's, no adjustment is needed. It's still valuable guidance, right? Now that you've seen why traditional withdrawal strategies might be putting your retirement at risk, what concerns me most in my practice is how blindly following the 4% rule doesn't take into account your unique situation, your goals, priorities, concerns, right? The most successful retirees I work with aren't just using a simple percentage. They're implementing a dynamic withdrawal strategy tailored to their unique situation. If you want me to analyze your retirement plan and show you exactly how to optimize your withdrawal strategy for maximum sustainability, click the first link in the description and book a complimentary call. I'll see you in the next one.